In the words of the strange, shadowy figure that appeared at my bedside last night at 3:35 a.m., boo? Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba-ba. Hello, homies. Welcome to Oktoberfest right here on Thumb Together. My name is Andrew Fantasia. Thank you so much for tuning in today. As usual, if you enjoy this video, please feel free to give it a thumbs up and give some love to that subscribe button as well. Otherwise, that shadowy figure will be back, and he said he's bringing friends. Every human being, in one way, shape, or form, loves a good ghost story. Ghosts are mysterious. They're intriguing. We don't know if they actually exist, even though hundreds, if not thousands of people have claimed to have experienced encounters with ghosts. The idea is still such an enigma that we can't help but be fascinated by it. Now, I'm a very, very light sleeper, and I'm also very easily frightened by horror movies, so normally I can't handle ghost movies, alright? You're not going to get me into a Conjuring or a Nun or a Poltergeist anytime soon. That's not happening. But I heard great things about today's movie, and considering that it's a much, much older movie, I decided, hey, what the heck, maybe I'll be able to handle this one. Older horror movies are pretty tame. Let's give it a go. And today's movie is the 1963 film, The Haunting. Based off the novel The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, this tells the story of a very large old haunted house that is haunted because it has some violent history, which you learn in the prologue of the movie. A professor who is studying paranormal phenomena wants to document what happens in this house and try to finally put a lid on the debate of whether or not ghosts are real. In order to conduct this study, the professor invites a handful of people to spend a couple of nights in the house and see what happens. It's a science experiment where absolutely nothing can go wrong. The main character and one of the people invited to stay at the house is a woman named Eleanor. Now, Eleanor is really interesting because she spent her entire life taking care of her sickly and often cruel mother. Eleanor was basically a slave to her mother for her entire life. Now that she's an adult, I think she's somewhere in her mid-30s, the mother finally passed away, and Eleanor suddenly finds herself with a life that she doesn't know what to do with. Now, because she never really had a job or had friends or held down any semblance of anything sort of ordinary, she doesn't really know what to do with herself. So she ends up staying with her sister and her sister's husband and their family, but she feels like she's imposing, and her sister isn't very welcoming either. So Eleanor starts to sink into this weird quasi-depression, quasi-madness where she feels like life is just kicking her when she's down and she has nowhere to go. All of a sudden, she gets invited to partake in this experiment where she gets to stay at this haunted house far away from the city where she spent her entire life. To her, this is the most enticing prospect in the world, and she steals her sister's car, zooms over to the house, and begins partaking in the experiment. Eleanor is so afraid and ashamed of her old life and everything that has happened to her that even though this haunted house is doing some messed up things to her mind and scaring her out of her wits, she is terrified of the prospect of going back to her normal mundane existence. To the point where, when the professor suggests that maybe this experiment might be too much for her, she breaks down in tears and begs him to let her stay. That right there makes her one of the most interesting characters you will see in a horror movie pretty much ever. And considering this is from 1963, that's pretty ahead of its time, man. You don't usually get characters that complex in these older movies, especially older horrors. Speaking of being ahead of its time, the film also has a prominent gay character. The Haunting was woke before woke was even a thing. Now, yes, this isn't a spoiler. Hill House is in fact haunted. But because we see so much of the action from Eleanor's point of view, we start to question ourselves and we start to think, is she experiencing paranormal phenomena? Or is this lady slowly falling deeper and deeper into a pit of her own madness? And by the end of the movie, you've seen a lot, but you're not sure what was real and what was in her head. And I think that just adds to the terror of it all, because the thought of our own minds messing with us in such a way that we might think external forces are coming after us, to the point where we might even get ourselves hurt. That's terrifying, man. And Eleanor runs a gauntlet of that nonstop from the moment the movie starts to the moment the movie ends. But you all know what a chicken I am when it comes to ghost movies and things of that ilk. So what's my verdict on the scare factor here? Did this movie freak me out? And the answer is yes, it did. But not in a way that made me lose sleep. At least not yet. I will say this, okay? I've had some moments in my life where I didn't specifically see anything supernatural or even hear anything supernatural, but I have had feelings where something else was present with me. I've sort of flirted with the paranormal world, but I haven't exactly, asked it out to dinner and maybe made things official. There's a scene in The Haunting that takes place on Eleanor's second night in the house that I think, judging by my own limited experiences with the other side, I think this scene is the most realistic portrayal of what it would be like to spend the night in a room where there may be an entity or entities in that room with you. Just that scene alone is enough to give me goosebumps, and I'm sure it will do the same to you. The way it was shot, the way the dialogue works, the way the sound works, all of it comes together in this cornucopia of just discomfort that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up and stay standing up for the duration of the scene. I don't want to spoil that scene for you. I think it's something you need to watch for yourself, but if you have ever had encounters in real life, or if you're just a fan of ghost stories in general, this film, and in particular this scene, is something that you really need to watch at least once. This scene feels so realistic that I wouldn't be surprised if they just had a camera rolling on this actress while she slept and recorded her actually experiencing something inside this haunted room. That's all I'm going to say. And surprise, there was a remake in 1999, because that's what horror likes to do. They just like to remake shit. And the operative word there is shit, because the 1999 remake, despite a pretty good cast, did not deliver the goods. Liam Neeson, Owen Wilson, and Catherine Zeta-Jones were all in the remake, and even they couldn't save it from being an absolute flop. They took away some of the really subtle psychological trauma that was going on with the character of Eleanor and just made it a bit too on the nose. The ghosts were all on the nose, and they were very cartoony and very CGI-y, and this is 1999, so the CGI on these ghosts did not look pleasant at all. And at the end, it involved like a giant evil ghost face inside of like a tornado, and I'm like, what is happening here? This is silly. So stay as far away from the 1999 remake as you possibly can, but track down the 1963 original, because folks, this is a ghost story, the likes of which I've never seen before, but I definitely think it's the most true-to-life one that has ever been put to screen. Anyway, that's Oktoberfest for today. My name is Andrew Fantasia. I will see you here again very soon. Until next time, sleep well.